Hey guys, Aaron Cybertron Zhang here, and today I'm back with another episode of Road to Ranked, where I climb the online Series 12 ladder and provide live commentary as I go. Today we're trying out a very fun team featuring Alolan Marowak, as well as the Kyogre Calyrex-Ice Rider duo, Choice Scarf Urshifu, and Leer Tornadus. This was sent in to me by a player called D-Walk, so thank you to him for the team. I've linked his Twitter down in the description below, as well as a rental and a paste if you want to try it out yourselves. And as always, I'll do a quick breakdown of the team, but if you want to just skip slip battles and timestamps in the description below, feel free to do so. And if you enjoy, please share support by leaving a like. I would really appreciate it. So, first of all, we gotta talk about Alolan Marowak a little bit. We featured this Pokemon throughout Sword and Shield, but it's not very common in the Series 12 format. Like, I've never used it in Series 12, and we haven't really gone up against it either. So, what are the advantages of Alolan Marowak? First of all, this thing is an incredible Dynamax option and does a ton of damage, and it's especially nice because you can combo it with Calyrex-Ice Rider, where Marowak can drop your opponent's Pokemon's defenses via Max Phantasm when you Dynamax it, allowing Calyrex to do even more damage with its attacks. And the Marowak here is going to underspeed the Calyrex, and so with Trick Room, you outspeed Calyrex, meaning you Phantasm first, drop their defenses, and then Calyrex attacks. It also gets access to Lightning Rod, which means that it can be used to protect Kyogre from electric-type attacks coming out from Pokemon like Landorus or Regieleki, which is also really valuable. And it's also just, a huge offensive beast. Like, it gets very nice type coverage, and between Fire and Ghost, like, it is very hard for Pokemon to reliably deal with Marowak. And so one mode you can go with this team is Indeedee Calyrex-Ice Rider. Just go for Follow Me into Trick Room, and then, bring out Marowak, and then sweep with Phantasms with Calyrex, and then use Kyogre in the late game to clean up games. That's one mode you can go with. The other mode you can go with is a faster Tailwind route with Tornadus, Urshifu, Kyogre, and Calyrex. Urshifu here is really important into Calyrex Shadow Rider teams because, as you'll notice, Calyrex, Marowak, and Kyogre as the offensive trio here is really offensively weak into Calyrex Shadow Rider. And so Scarf Urshifu is really nice because, normally on those teams you'll see like Aleki plus Calyrex, and so you can just Tailwind with Tornadus, get a big Wicked Blow off. Kyogre can then come in and get damage off, and then late game Calyrex is really nice. The thing to note here is that the Calyrex is not a speedy Calyrex, right? And so you can't take advantage of Tailwind really, but that's okay because you have the Focus Sash item. So what that allows you to do is play an early game with Tornadus, Urshifu, and Kyogre, and then bring out Calyrex in the end game, and maybe even set up a Trick Room, or just go for Glacial Lance because you can survive one big attack and then retaliate back and try to get a knockout. The team also has a bunch of cool tech moves here, right, and tech items, and so you've got Brick Break on the Marowak. That's actually helpful against Grimmsnarl on screens if you're in a position to go for it. Tornadus here is Mentor to help against Taunt coming out mainly from like Whimsicott, and so you can actually, get your Tailwind up even if you're going up against Whimsicott. There's also Leer here, so dropping your opponent's defenses is valuable given, 3 physical attackers on the team. Calyrex here is Focus Sash with Seed Bomb. Seed Bomb is really valuable into a lot of water types, but more importantly against Gastrodon and Kyogre specifically. And Sash is also, not that common as an item on Calyrex. And this Calyrex isn't like hyper offensive in terms of like max attack, max speed, but the Sash is still really valuable because it allows you to comfortably play with it both under the Trick Room mode as well as the Tailwind mode, right? Because without Sash, Calyrex in the late game is just a lot weaker because you can just feign to a Behemoth Blade from Zacian. With the Focus Sash, you can survive a big Behemoth Blade and either go for a Trick Room or high horsepower against it. And then the Urshifu here has the Choice Scarf, which is not exactly the most common item. Scarf Urshifu is really nice because then with Tailwind, you really just outspeed everything. And even without Tailwind, Urshifu can outspeed the Calyrex Shadow Rider, which is really important. Trying to just bring it down to its Sash immediately is a big deal when you're going up against it. So, yeah, we're going to see how Alolan Marowak fares in the metagame today, but I think that's a very strong Pokemon, and this team supports it so well. And it is, I think, the most important Pokemon on this team in the couple of games I've played with it. So, thanks so much, as always, for watching. Question of the day, as you may know, I'm a big music fan, and Kendrick Lamar's album just came out after 5 years, and so I'm going to be listening to it right after this episode finishes. But question of the day, I'm curious, what's one album release that you're excited for in the near future, as I'm always looking for new music as well. So let me know yours in the comment section below. Totally okay if you say the Kendrick album, and let's get started. All right, first game of the day, and it's actually Zacian plus Kyurem. Okay, haven't gone up against that in a while. I prefer to play towards Marowak and Calyrex here. I think the main thing to maybe watch out for is going to be the Ferrothorn on my opponent's end. It's pretty difficult for them to deny Trick Room via Indeedee Calyrex with Marowak Kyogre in the back. Like, I could go the Tornadus route as well, right? But if I go Tailwind, I don't really have super good damage into Kyurem. I guess the best would be close combat from Urshifu. So I guess, like, you could theoretically go the faster route here with Tornadus Urshifu Calyrex and Kyogre, but I think this is a decent matchup for the Trick Room route instead. So, you know, I always say it's a good thing when you can go with either mode on your team, because it means that you have a lot more flexibility in best of 3 and you're not solely relying on the same Pokemon and strategy over and over again. But, of course, I want to feature the Marowak here, and I think Marowak's just a lot more effective under Trick Room. So, it's going to be Indeedee and Kyurem as their lead. Okay, that's totally okay with me. I think this is actually pretty strong, because turn 1, it's just follow me into Trick Room. If I'm them, you can go for something like Helping Hand plus Max Warmwind to try to KO Indeedee. Okay, so we get Psychic Surge up. Then Marowak comes out. I wonder if there's Psychic Seed as well. That's my other question here. No. Okay, so it could be Sash Indeedee then. Do they have another Sash user on their team? Insync could be, but kind of unlikely here. Yeah, turn 1 I am just going to follow me into Trick Room. I guess what gets scary is if I bring out Marowak next turn, like, they can just pressure with another Helping Hand play, and that's kind of scary. So maybe, instead, I actually bring out Kyogre. The idea is by bringing out Kyogre, we can try to force the knockout onto Indeedee. I guess the scary thing is if I bring in Kyogre, they can just protect a slot. Like, protect the Indeedee, and then go for another max move. Because the problem is that Kyurem's damage output here is actually very nice. So, yeah, they go for the Helping Hand. No surprise there. It would have been interesting to protect Indeedee here. Maybe that's not actually a terrible option because I'm Focus Sashed anyway, but nah. I don't mind losing Indeedee here on turn 1. Yep, and that will get the one-hit knockout. Kyurem White offensively is actually amazing into our comp here, which is a little bit scary, but that's okay. So what do I expect in the back? Ferrothorn, Zacian makes the most sense as their final 2, in my opinion. So we'll get Trick Room up here. Now I can bring out Marowak, Max Knuckle into Glacial Lance, but I'm worried about more Helping Hand pressure from Indeedee. Because, for example, if I bring out Marowak and they go like Helping Hand, Life Orb, Max Quake into Marowak, that's a pretty big disaster in my opinion. And since I'm Focus Sashed on Calyrex, I can take a potential max move. I'd rather actually just bring in Kyogre and go for Water Spout into Glacial Lance here. Because if we knock out the Indeedee, it really paves the way for Marowak to just sweep the entire game, but Marowak obviously can't go for Max Phantasm while Indeedee's out on the field. I mean, you could, but Indeedee can just follow me, redirect it away, and then you do no damage, right? So, yeah, the Kyurem here is honestly really strong. It's funny because, like, Kyurem really hasn't had too many. I'm trying to think if it had any top 8 so far throughout all the majors this year. It's one of those teams that, like, or one of those Pokemon that, like, you never want to run into, but, like, it always feels a little bit weak using as well. Just because, like, Kyurem itself inherently is such a terrible matchup into Zacian, which is obviously the most common restricted Pokemon. So they're going to opt for Wormwind here. Onto the Kyogre slot, okay. So the thing is, yes, they do get a one-hit knockout. Yes, I'm at -2 with Calyrex, but I have 2 extra turns of Dynamax relative to them, and I get a free switch into my Marowak right now. So it's honestly not that bad right now, even though it feels like I'm behind because of, you know, the early knockouts. But I've gotten Marowak into a position where I'm pretty happy about. Ferrothorn does come out for my opponent. That's not really super surprising. This definitely could be the Iron Defense variant with Body Press. So what do I want to go for here? 3 turns of Trick Room left. I'm at -2 with Calyrex. Like, I think I ideally want to Dynamax, go for Phantasm onto Kyurem. I could just Flare the Ferrothorn here, honestly. But, like, I want the knockout on a Kyurem ideally. Kyurem could Max Guard here is the only problem. Okay, I think I will go for Phantasm into Glacial Lance here. If you are indeed, by the way, Iron Defense Body Press Ferrothorn, you actually can't hit the Marowak. In fact, Marowak in itself is just amazing into LaFerro here. So, this turn is pretty big. I mean, like, you could obviously just Max Guard into Kyurem, but if you do that, then the next turn, I think Phantasm into Ferrothorn and a Glacial Lance. You know, not only do I get a defense drop on a Ferro, but I also probably just KO Kyurem. Oh, and Ferro protects. Beautiful. I think that actually might allow me to just win the game. Well, I was going to say, I guess Kyurem could have Max Guarded there, but they opt not to. Beautiful. We actually just get the knockout there with Marowak. I would have preferred for, you know, Calyrex to finish it off to get an attack boost there, but the nice thing is, you know, the defense drop there. So that's a KO. Zacian presumably is my opponent's final Pokemon here. Glacial Lance is wasted. That's fine. Okay. I want to just double check how many turns of Trick Room we have left. Yep, so there's Zacian. This game is still it's not guaranteed yet, but we're definitely in a decent spot. One of the other upsides here is Marowak just doesn't actually take that much from Zacian because we resist most of its attacks. So I've got 2 turns of Trick Room here. You're at -1 defense with Ferrothorn, so a Flare should just eliminate you, I would think, but you could Iron Defense. Honestly, in this position, I'd rather Phantasm Zacian because I just don't think Ferrothorn has a way to beat Marowak. So Phantasm into that slot, into high horsepower, even though I expect Zacian to protect. If Zacian doesn't protect here, game's over, I think. And they just Leech Seed. Beautiful. Because that's the thing, right? If you think about Ferrothorn's moveset, the only thing I'm worried about... I could still lose the game, actually, if I miss high horsepower here. Ugh, Glacial Lance actually would have just gotten the knockout. I should have gone for that instead, but I was not sure... Like, I was worried about Zacian being ultra bulky. I don't know, like max HP. But we connect. Okay, beautiful. This was the perfect game to demonstrate just how strong this Marowak-Calyrex combination can be, right? But basically, my logic there is, okay, the Ferrothorn just committed a Protect. Ferrothorn normally wants to run a combination of Leech Seed, Iron Defense, Body Press, a Steel-type attack like Gyro Ball, for example. Now, occasionally, Ferrothorn will be like Choice Band with Knockoff. That's the only thing that really scares Marowak here, but because they already committed to Protect the previous turn, I figured that wouldn't be the case, right? So this game was a fascinating example of how I like went down very quickly in terms of Pokemon. I was down, you know, 2-3, but because I conserved my Dynamax, it was totally worth it, right? And trading Indeedee to get that free switch into Marowak was amazing because my opponent's team essentially had very few answers into the Alolan Marowak here. So this is exactly what this team is designed to do, right? You just got to figure out how to position yourself properly for it. Indeedee, you know, going down on turn 1 often is actually a good thing for you because it means you get a free switch in. In this game, though, because we saw the helping hand pressure from the Indeedee, it just meant that I had to go into Kyogre first rather than the Marowak. What could have been scary in this game is on turn 2 if my opponent protected the Indeedee instead, because then you get a really powerful max move off. You probably wouldn't one-shot either of my Pokemon then. So then I guess if you don't one-shot, then the next turn I can just Origin Pulse Glacial Lance anyway, so yeah. But because they just sacrificed Indeedee, it meant that Marowak had an amazing endgame here. And even though Ferrothorn can be scary under Trick Room, like, Marowak actually really walls it. So this game highlights how good Marowak can be against a lot of Pokemon in the format, and then, like, Zacian in that endgame as well just doesn't really threaten Marowak with very much outside of a Behemoth Blade. So, awesome first game here. Second match here, and we're up against Yveltal plus Zacian, which I think is one of the trickier restricted combos for this team, because Yveltal is just honestly really good into this entire team comp. The general way I've approached it is like, you know, Calyrex-Ice Rider, Glacial Lance is incredible even against Dynamax Yveltal, especially if you can get a defense drop, and so I also lean towards the Trick Room route in this matchup. Mainly because, like, even if I get Tailwind up, Calyrex and Marowak are still slower than the, Yveltal, and like Dynamax Kyogre isn't that good if they're Assault Vest here. So I think I'm just gonna go with Indeedee and Calyrex with Marowak and Kyogre again. Like, the Tailwind route can really work, especially against Calyrex Shadow Rider Hyper Offense teams, because like Tornadus plus Urshifu is a super good lead against those, and then like you can just Tailwind Wicked Blow, sacrifice Urshifu or Tornadus, get Kyogre, and then just, you know, Water Spout or Dynamax Kyogre. But in this matchup, without knowing the item on Yveltal, like, if we knew it were Life Orb, Max, which is typically the case here, Max Special Attack or Max Attack plus Speed, then maybe I'd be a little bit more willing to go the Tailwind route. But without knowing its item here, like, if it is AV and I, like, committed Dynamax on Kyogre, it doesn't feel great. And I feel like the Trick Room route is still pretty strong because Marowak is, like, still just has incredible damage output against everything. But Yveltal is definitely, I would say, one of the trickier restricteds to go up against because, yeah, Dark is obviously really good into both the Zacian as well as the... Or sorry, not the Zacian, the Calyrex as well as the Marowak. Okay. I'm just nervous about losing the Terrain War here, but we'll see. Because if we lost the Terrain War, it would mean a Fake Out on turn 1. And wow, okay, Rillaboom actually underspeeds me here. That's not good. That is not good. This is the one thing that gives me trouble with this lead. How would I have outled this, though? I don't even know. The thing is, I do have the Focus Sash on Calyrex, right? So because of that, I'm actually still down to just follow me and Trick Room, I think. What other options do I really have available here? I can't protect Calyrex, so that slot's going to just eat up a lot. I think I need to get Trick Room to win this game, honestly. So I wonder if they're just min-speed on the Rillaboom. Probably is the case for the Terrain War. So I wonder if it's a speed tile is my other question. Follow me. Yeah, I am just going to follow me Trick Room here because I have Focus Sash. Like, your play normally is to fake out the Indeedee. Okay, they fake out Calyrex, that's fine. Oh, it's not fine if... Oh, they sub. Okay, I'll take that. I will definitely take that. Especially with Grassy Terrain healing the Calyrex up right now. That's actually pretty valuable as well. Yeah, because another turn in my Focus Sash actually essentially comes back. So I am just going to follow me into Trick Room here. This is where having Focus Sash is such a big deal. Sub as a play there makes a ton of sense, by the way, because you normally expect Calyrex to maybe like switch out, fake out covers for me clicking Trick Room anyway. The problem, what I was going to talk about, is if they had actually just clicked Behemoth Blade into Indeedee, then you can glide to KO Indeedee next turn, and because my Focus Sash isn't intact, you can also just Behemoth Blade to KO the Calyrex, right? And that's obviously a nightmare. Okay, it's going to be Blade here. Could be Knockoff or Woodhammer from Calyrex right now, both which are really scary. Let's see if they one-shot Indeedee. They don't, which is absolutely huge, because it means now my Focus Sash comes back on Calyrex. It is going to be Woodhammer. Cool. So you take some recoil. I still have no idea what item the Rillaboom is running. That makes things slightly trickier for us, but it's okay. My other question here is the Yveltal. Are you running Life Orb or Assault Vest? Like, do you have Sucker Punch? Because if so, Calyrex just kind of still is in a weird spot, right? The play I want to make right now is to just bring out the Marowak and just Phantasm into Zacian and Glacial Lance. Because if you don't have... Oh, I guess you could just glide into Calyrex right now as well and double up into that slot. That's the other problem. Maybe I have to cover for that. I mean, the other question is, do you really double up onto Calyrex here? Do you expect Focus Sash? The sub is such a nice move to have against Trick Room, so that was a really sweet play by my opponent. If I had Protect here, I'd go for it, but we don't. If they do just double up on a Calyrex, I'm in a ton of danger. I should have went for High Horsepower there instead, but I went for Glacial Lance to cover for an Yveltal switch in. So basically the logic here is if I went for Phantasm onto the Zacian, and they did indeed double up on a Calyrex, maybe it was fine actually, because I would get a Phantasm, it would break the sub, I would Glacial Lance knock out Rillaboom, and then it's a free switch into Kyogre, so maybe I overdought this turn a little bit, honestly. But I also don't think this alternative is that bad because it's a free switch into Kyogre. It's just the Glacial Lance now. Like, does the single target Glacial Lance break the sub? I would think so. And if so, then the outcome is essentially the same. I just missed out on a defense drop on the Zacian. I would think single target Glacial Lance does break sub. Like, this is still a pretty powerful attack. But if they're like max HP, maybe it survives, and that's kind of sad. Then it means, like, yeah, I should have clicked Phantasm instead. Okay, it does break this up. Okay, so then it's not terrible. I just missed out on a potential defense drop on Zacian. I had no way around this double up, though, unfortunately. If I had Protect there on Calyrex, I definitely would have gone for it, because we weren't at risk of taking much damage with the Marowak. But, you know, the upside is now I get a free switch it into the Kyogre, obviously. To which I can Water Spout. Then you would expect my opponent to maybe protect Zacian. This is the one slight downside with Kyogre plus Marowak, is like canceling out the Sun right now and setting up the Rain instead. We have eliminated Rillaboom. Losing the Terrain War on turn 1 was super bad. Like, if we win the Terrain War there, I think we're in a much better spot. Well, does it really make much of a difference? Maybe not. It would just mean that Rillaboom can't really accomplish that much turn 1. I guarantee get Trick Room up, essentially. But, yeah, maybe it doesn't make that much of a difference. So... I definitely want to click Water Spout with Kyogre right now. Maybe Yveltal Dynamaxes. Like, I'm almost considering a Max Guard on Marowak here, expecting Yveltal to max and then Max Darkness Marowak. But, like, I'm also down for a Max Phantasm into a Water Spout here. I guess the question is, does Max Darkness one-shot Marowak? I don't know that damage calc off the top of my head. I think it was maybe better to Max Guard here, but if we survive... Oh, are they just double protecting here? That would make sense. Oh, they actually opt for the Sucker Punch route. Okay. Ooh, that's a lot of damage, though. So they did have Sucker Punch here, which also didn't make things any easier for me. However, like, another Sucker Punch won't KO me, and that's a big deal. I just don't know if Water Spout then KOs the Yveltal from the range that they're at. I wouldn't think so, to be honest, if they're Assault Vest. And given that we didn't see a Life Orb, AV here just makes the most sense to me. Okay, we get the KO, though. Hey, that's not bad. Because now it's a free knockout onto Zacian. So what is your final Pokemon here? Because we've eliminated the biggest threat to Kyogre. Marowak's biggest threat was Yveltal here, so I'll take it. I thought that was a decent position to Dynamax the Yveltal, but I guess you still take so much damage. Ooh, Blastoise is their last one. Okay, nicely conserved. Yeah, that makes sense. Man, this was a really tough matchup then, typing-wise, because I actually just don't have that much good damage into Blastoise here, truthfully. It's 2 turns of Trick Room left. I just can't hit Blastoise with anything other than Marowak is the problem. And you can obviously G-Max Cannonade me right now. Okay, I'm gonna go for Flare. Oh, I do have Thunder here. I went for Water Spout here instead, but I think I should have just clicked Thunder. Okay, actually, because we had Thunder, the better route, I think, was Max Phantasm. So the reason I went for Flare here, by the way, is because I don't want to get one-shot by Blastoise. So the idea is I change the weather, your G-Max Cannonade does way less damage to Marowak, and that allows me to maybe get a Poltergeist off. But I guess the problem is that because there's only 2 turns of Trick Room, Blastoise can just Max Guard next turn anyway. And I one-shot Zacian there anyway, so yeah, Thunder would have been better. Yeah. Or I could have Phantasm Blastoise Origin Pulse. I don't think that KOs, though. Kyogre's faster, though. Hold on, that actually makes things really interesting, because I don't think Blastoise does that much into Kyogre here. Marowak does take that with about half health, okay. It's Life Orb as well. I went for Water Spout there to try to ensure the knockout onto the Zacian, but maybe that was questionable. However, Blastoise typically doesn't have great damage output into Kyogre, and the fact that we're faster here could mean good things for us. It's going to come down to whether or not we hit a couple Thunders in Sun, honestly. Like, the odds aren't amazing in my favor. That last turn, if I went for Thunder instead, I'd have a lot more damage output. Just wasn't sure how much I'd do to Blastoise there. But the speed dynamic here is actually really interesting, because Marowak's going to be faster under Trick Room, whereas Kyogre's going to be slower. So, like, I can just Poltergeist here, which does a ton of damage with the defense drop, and just go for Thunder. Okay, they don't protect, we're Max Guard. Poltergeist connects, okay, that's amazing. It's a lot of damage. They just go for another Cannonade, that's totally okay. I was really surprised to not see a Max Guard there. I was really surprised to not see that, but I'll take it. Yeah, it comes down to whether or not we hit a Thunder or 2 here. Okay. Nice, Kyogre hits that first one. We might not even... Oh, wow, that just KOs. Sweet. Oh, this was such a scary matchup, because Yveltal was so good into Marowak and Calyrex. Blastoise is so good into Marowak, but the thing is that their late game damage output into Kyogre was pretty lacking, and it was kind of funny. I actually briefly forgot about the fact Kyogre had Thunder, because it's like, occasionally you'll run an Ice-type attack instead. So I was like, how do we do damage into Blastoise? And so I was like, I need to use a Phantasm or a Flare to change the weather so that Marowak can get another attack off. If we don't have Thunder there and they Max Guard, like, we lose the game, right? That's kind of what I was thinking in my head. But I guess since Kyogre was faster, maybe there was a way we could have pulled it off, since, like, it's not like Blastoise does that much to us. I'm curious about the rest of the moves, because we only saw Life Orb Cannonade. Normally you'll want to run an Ice-type attack. You could run Fake Out. You could run Yawn, for example. So, yeah, but I think both of these games have really highlighted how amazing Alolan Marowak can be. So I'm really happy about its performance, and let's look for one last one. Third game here. It's Lugia! Yes! Yes! I honestly want to lose to this. You know, it's actually been a while since we've done, like, I lost to this team, so I had to try it out, because, like, I feel like a lot of the teams we've lost to just haven't been, or aren't public. So, Lugia actually had, like, one of the hypest games during the first game of the regional stream, which I was lucky enough to commentate, piloted by a player called John Hu, and it was, like, Sucker Punch into activating Weakness Policy on Lugia, and then just, you know, going for very powerful attacks. So, I love seeing Lugia here. I would not mind losing to it, honestly. This game's interesting because I'm actually thinking about trying the Tailwind route instead, but maybe that's just a bad idea. Because the thing with Tailwind is that, like, you normally want Kyogre to sweep under Tailwind, but it's not that effective here because they have Gastrodon, Kartana, as well as Grimmsnarl. So, and I've got Seed Bomb on Calyrex. I think this is probably still a Trick Room angle. I mean, the alternative is to just... No, I mean, Marowak is so good against Lugia, right, in my opponent's team. How can I not go with this route? Because, like, Marowak is just a lot weaker when you're not going for Trick Room. And you can still bring it, but then it's more normally to support the Kyogre from electric-type attacks. And I just can't afford to do that here. Marowak actually, I think, has a very favorable matchup here. Very close to timer there. If they go Grimlando, decent chance they timed out. If it is Grimlando, what am I going to do? Because I don't necessarily need a Trick Room on turn 1. I could just Glacial Lance. But I think Follow Me Trick Room is still the right play. If they end up timing out and have Grimlando, they'll probably switch Lando out in a Zacian, set up a Reflect. That is Grimlando. I honestly think they may have timed out there, but it still wasn't actually that bad of a lead into what I brought. However, if it is Grimlando, Lugia, Zacian, and you did not bring the Gastrodon or the Kartana, it means Kyogre has a much better time in this matchup. The problem, right, is going to be breaking through my opponent's screens. Because I think here, turn 1, they're just going to Reflect and switch Landorus out into Zacian. So here's the play. I think it's to actually switch Indeedee out and not bother going for a Follow Me. This is, like, a little bit risky because, like, theoretically they could Dynamax Landorus and, like, max Rockfall plus Foul Play or go for a Dark-type attack, but I don't think they ever go for that. Normally with Indeedee, the idea is to, you know, absorb damage from your opponent, but in this matchup right now, I don't really think we need to do that. Because Landorus is in such a weird spot here anyway. You don't really want to Dynamax in front of this. And if they double up on a Calyrex and I lose Calyrex on turn 1, I mean, they're staying in with Landorus. It could be U-turn as well. Dynamax Landorus would definitely be the craziest option. The main reason I went for this is because if Landorus just pivots out into Zacian... Oh. They go for... Wait, okay, Fly and Grimmsnarl also did not go for... It's just a Spirit Break. That is interesting. Okay. Onto Kyogre. That's actually a very powerful Spirit Break into Kyogre. So it's not a terrible option for them, honestly. Landorus is forced to come down now, though. I am down to, I think, just go for Glacial Lance and Water Spout here. Maybe I should Origin Pulse instead, because Grim outspeeding Kyogre here under Trick Room is certainly a possibility. The Fly play, by the way, is to cover for Dynamax Calyrex, which I think is actually really smart. Yeah, so they're not going to go for screens with Grim. Do you even have screens? I mean, I would think it's Spirit Break, Sucker Punch, dual screens, but maybe not. Yeah, they are faster than us under Trick Room. Oof. That makes things, like, slightly awkward, as Kyogre's taking way more damage than I would have liked at this point. So that's a great Spirit Break on turn 1 rather than going for screens, honestly. Kudos. Okay. I think this next turn, I'm honestly going to want to switch Kyogre out. Because Glacial Lance will finish off Grim. There's Fly. Uh-oh, onto Calyrex, yep. Oh, it's Life Orb Land, okay. Yeah, like, Glacial Lance here... I said switch Kyogre out. Like, I want to go into Marowak right now. I guess the one problem is that they Dynamax Landorus, but if you Dynamax Lando, I think that's fine. Calyrex is in a great spot right now. I'm just curious about Lugia here, and also, like, who Dynamax is. Because If we KO Landorus, that completely opens the game up for Alolan Marowak in the endgame, because Alolan Marowak's really good into both Lugia and Zacian offensively. I guess the problem is I can't one-shot the Lugia very easily, so like late game Lugia here is actually still really scary. And my opponent played this early game in a slightly unconventional way by going for the early Spirit Breaks, and I think that was really smart, because it punished my Kyogre switch in very heavily. They are going to Dynamax, okay. I don't mind that too much though, honestly, I think. Unless they Quake to one-shot the Marowak switch in, that could get scary. It is not every day you see a Landorus Dynamax in front of a Calyrex-Ice Rider. That is cool. There's Reflect finally, okay. I do expect it to still be Light Clay dual screens, honestly, given that they have a Lugia on their team. That's still so much damage on a Landorus. But I guess they felt forced to max. I don't know, though. You could have just switched out into Zacian, in my opinion. Okay, and go for Rockfall. Yeah, that makes sense. Change the weather, sure. Into Calyrex. Does that even KO us? That with Life Orb. No, it still doesn't. Wow. That is pretty underwhelming damage then, if anything. Okay. The way we lose this game now is Trick Room expiring. 17 down to 5, so obviously I can't take another turn of Sandstorm, but I could always pivot Marowak out into Kyogre to reset the weather, and then just Glacial Lance. They're going to bring out Zacian, though, so given that, we have, what, 2 turns of Trick Room? If it's 2, then it's pretty simple, just Phantasm into Zacian Glacial Lance right now. Yeah. Glacial Lance, max good old Marowak, go for Phantasm, and just Lance. I hope today's episode has highlighted how good Marowak can be for you all, though, because it's just been amazing offensively. Was it correct to Phantasm here? I think the answer is yes, because, oh, actually, no, Flare is better, isn't it? Because it just changes the weather, so then Calyrex doesn't faint. Yeah. In my head, though, I was like, okay, well, if I lose the Calyrex, then I just get a free switch into Kyogre. But Flare Glacial Lance, I think, is just objectively better here. Unless they switch. I guess this is the one argument you make for Phantasm. I think we should just win the game with Marowak now, honestly. Because Phantasm plus Lance, even Reflect up on Lugia, I think should be a KO. I just, you know, they were going all in on trying to KO the Calyrex, and the fact that Life Orb Rockfall didn't even KO regular Calyrex is just kind of sad, even after some chip damage. It's a testament to how defensive Calyrex can be, right? And they max guard, yeah. If Flare and Lance also would have worked here, because I would have, Flare and Lance, we would change the weather, and then Glacial Lance the next turn would just pick up a double KO, but then I guess Lugia could protect, you could pivot Landorus out into Zacian, so, like, I don't mind snowballing the game a little bit quicker right now. There's policy on Lugia, that's fine. In my head, I thought, like, the route they were going to go was Dynamaxing Lugia and trying to, like, stagger their Dynamax, but the fact that they Dynamaxed first, and ended up maxing Landorus instead, makes things a lot better for me, right? But I think it's pretty clear they were saying, okay, well, the Calyrex-Ice Rider is a nightmare to deal with, so I need to eliminate that as quickly as possible. So, poor Lugia, unfortunately, does not get to do very much, but like I said, I think my opponent may have timed out in this game, so it would have been interesting to see how it would have played out if they did not time out. Okay, now we can just easily go back out into Kyogre, and they don't have any special defense boosts on Landorus, so it's a pretty clear Water Spout into Phantasm on Zacian. My opponent's angle right now is going for a double protect on Calyrex, actually. So this is the interesting thing. Do I want to play around the double protect? Shoot, I actually think the right answer was to go into Indeedee first. I shouldn't have made my move so fast there. Because if I go into Indeedee first, I can just follow me plus Phantasm really safely. I guess even if you get the double, though, what do you accomplish the next turn? I think it's still fine to just Water Spout and Phantasm into Zacian here. And if they don't get the double with Landorus, the game's just over. They need a double with it right now. So we have a 2/3 chance to essentially win the game immediately. Shoutouts to Marowak, though, man. This mon is pretty dang good. It's just fun to use, like, a Trick Room component that doesn't necessarily, like, last 10 turns, right? Games with this team are a little bit shorter. And it's like, if you haven't won while you've gotten that first set of Trick Room up, like, it's going to be very difficult to get a second round up, right? So, yeah, they did indeed go for the double. So the play I was thinking was, okay, since, like, your obvious place to go for the double, let's say you get it, then I could pivot out the Kyogre out into Indeedee to anticipate that. I just don't think I get very much out of that, though, right? And I was like, even if you get the double, your Dynamax ends on Landorus. So then what are you accomplishing the next turn, right? If you want to damage Marowak, you'd have to go for Earthquake, but then you just protected your own Zacian, so you'd be Earthquaking yourself. That doesn't feel great. You could go for Rock Slide then. That's your best bet. But if you Rock Slide, like, because if you Rock Slide here, and I don't know, like, I guess you would play for a flinch and then a double crit onto Marowak, but I don't even think that does enough, honestly, to win the game for my opponent. So, yeah. At this point, let's just go for 100% accurate moves. There's no way Zacian can win a 3v1 here, because even if you get one knockout, I just bring out Indeedee, follow me, and then just go for, you know, whatever is 100% accurate onto Zacian. So, yeah. Would have been interesting to see how this game would have played out if they did not bring the, if they did not time out, right? Because I don't think Landorus and Grimm is, like, the ideal lead into this composition. I was thinking you could just go with an early Lugia, but to be honest, Lugia is just, unfortunately, a pretty weak restricted if you don't get the policy off, and in this game, it was going to be really tough for them to get the policy off, because you can't just safely Sucker Punch onto Lugia, because I have Indeedee with Follow Me, so that just redirects the Sucker Punch away. So, yeah. Alright, I decided I would do one more here, especially since we built up a nice win streak here. So it's going to be Zacian, Kyogre, Tornadus, Landorus, Kartana, Amoonguss for the next game here. Amoonguss is the main thing I'm concerned about in this matchup, in my opinion. Just not a day for Urshifu. It's, you know, mainly for Calyrex-Ice Rider. I could match their Tailwind, but then they have Airstream and I don't, so I feel like this is just a Trick Room game again. The problem is we're going to have to deal with the... It's a Trick Room game again, but we're going to have to deal with the Amoonguss sooner than later, because I think that's going to be the main problem here. So, how do we want to approach that? Like, what I'm nervous about is they have Amoonguss in the back, and I get Trick Room up, and then they get Amoonguss out and they start sporing me. I think that's going to be the primary concern here. So let's see how they deal with it. I'm also curious about what they lead with here. Is going to be Amoonguss and Kyogre. Great lead. This is a great lead by them. So here's what I think. What am I thinking? If I Rage Powder Trick Room turn 1, you Spore me, then you Spore Calyrex turn 2, that's a disaster. Can't really go for that. I feel like I kind of have to KO the Amoonguss immediately, if anything, but Kyogre's just going to Water Spout here, no? So you know what's a very interesting play? It's to Expanding Force and Protect on turn 1. Breaks a Sash on Amoonguss. Oof. Because I can totally win this game with Dynamax Kyogre as well, right? Yeah, that's possible. Okay, I'm going to Expanding Force and actually... the thing is, I have Seed Bombs. Like, the other interesting play is Max Overgrowth, but if Amoonguss just Spores Calyrex, it's a disaster. So I'm going to Expanding Force and Glacial Lance on turn 1 because I know I have Focus Sash on Calyrex. But if Water Spout one-shots Indeedee, that's obviously bad. Okay, nice. It's just I took so much damage on turn 1, but I don't think I can really go the Trick Room route in this game because they led Amoonguss. Although Expanding Force did so much damage there. I wonder... Oh, they're faster than Calyrex. Yeah, I think I'm doomed. They're not min speed Amoonguss. Very cool. You know what it actually might be? This could be... I wouldn't be surprised if we're max speed Amoonguss with 90 speed. And the reason for that is because... it's so frustrating, though, because it means then Follow Me Trick Room is the right play. But I'm always going to assume min speed on until I see otherwise. Because, it, like, you know, that's just more common, and that would be your Trick Room answer. Is there any world in which I come back now? I think first of all, it starts with protecting Indeedee and sacrificing it, but I don't have speed control anymore, so I think it's just over. So if I were to replay this matchup, then the objective, right, play the substitute, like, if we had the same leads again, it's just follow me and Trick Room on turn 1. Oh, and they have Kartana in the back. Yeah, I think this is doomed. So this is a very stark contrast from all the other games, right? Like, I essentially lost this game on the first turn by expecting it to be a certain Amoonguss speed stat. So then it's like, how would I play against this any differently? Because Amoonguss is just a problem for me. The way I'd play it differently is honestly just follow me Trick Room on turn 1. Because if we know Amoonguss is that speedy, it means Marowak also outspeeds it under Trick Room, and that's a big deal. But, I mean, I guess I can bring out Marowak now, but Kartana-Kyogre is one of the most oppressive duos you can have in this format, right? As Aaron Trailer demonstrated at Salt Lake City Regionals. So, yeah, I think this is basically over. Really cool stuff, though. Like, it goes to show, right, why, like, running speed investment or not being min speed on Amoonguss can actually be valuable. Because I had to play in a way assuming it was min speed, but my opponent could leverage that to their advantage. Also, so if you're 90 speed with Amoonguss, when you get Tailwind up, you hit 180, and that's a pretty decent benchmark to hit. I actually used max speed Amoonguss in VGC 2011 on a Tornadus Tailwind team. Yeah, I just don't see any way to win this game. I'll play it out for one more turn, but like, they just have so much offense between Kyogre, Kartana, and Zacian, right? That's just an incredible trio. Well, they don't Dynamax, which is interesting, but I guess you don't really need to, right? I feel like, is there any reason not to this turn, though? I guess then you can, like, you know, decide who you want to max between your remaining options. I mean, I just realistically take so much damage from Kyogre here with an Origin Pulse anyway. Like, even if I change the weather, like, what do I do next turn? I was honestly expecting a Kartana max here, though, so... But I think with Zacian in the back, they still win this. Okay, yeah, Leaf Blade gets the KO onto Indeedee. You know what damage calc I'm curious about? Whether or not Max Flare KOs Kartana in the rain when Dynamaxed. Like, Marowak is so strong, like we saw against the Zacian, that I think it might still... Oh, and they miss Origin Pulse. I mean, this is why I was kind of surprised they didn't Dynamax. Is there actually comeback potential now? That's why I didn't want to surrender this turn. Like, if you had just Dynamax Kyogre there and just gone for Geyser instead, you just crush me, right? So, I think they... I changed the weather with my Kyogre, so they're probably still fine, honestly. But now the play is Protect and then, like, critical hit Origin Pulse or angle for Thunder Para into full Para on Kyogre. So, I think we've turned at least what I thought was a 0% chance to win into, hey, like, we're still probably going to lose here, but the game's not 100% over yet. Yeah, I was just surprised not to see a max last turn, because I feel like you're going to max Kyogre or Kartana anyway, right? You're never going to max Amoonguss or Zacian, really, so why not just go for it? So now you probably max Kyogre, you just Geyser into Marowak. I'm just going to go for Thunder Para. The question here is whether or not, like, the other play could make here is now maybe they're in their own heads and they, like, are like, oh, shoot, I need a... Well, actually, you can't even double up on a Kyogre, right? Yeah. Because, like, even if you have Thunder, we have Lightning Rod support. So I think the best play is to actually just Thunder Kyogre and Protect here. Because, like, Marowak will actually win against Zacian plus Amoonguss, right? They're not maxing. I mean, I guess it's just play rough. Does that KO me, though? What, play rough and an Origin Pulse? I don't know. I feel like, even though... Yeah, now they'll win. I see no reason to not max there. They actually could lose... Well, maybe not, because, like, Amoonguss is faster and could Spore anyway, but, like, you risked an Origin Pulse miss there and the last turn, and they did miss, right? So, the thing is, they had such a big early lead in this game that it didn't really matter, but... I don't know, if you double miss Origin Pulse, Thunder KOs the Kyogre there, suddenly it's, like, Zacian plus Amoonguss against Marowak plus Kyogre, and you can't really Dynamax. I guess maybe if Amoonguss is foul play, you could Dynamax there, so... I essentially lost this game on the first turn against the Amoonguss because I assumed it was going to be slower than us, and I don't mind making that assumption in a best of one. Sometimes that's just how things shake out. So then as always, the question is, okay, what adjustments could I make? I still don't know the item on Amoonguss, whether or not it's Focus Sash or not. you know, you normally want to assume it's Sash. So I don't know. My opponent just found a very, very good lead, but I think they could have sealed this game up guaranteed a little bit quicker if they just Dynamax Kyogre the turn that they missed the Origin Pulse on Marowak. So, you know, like in endgames like that, it's like you're not going to really win unless your opponent like makes misplays or, you know, doesn't go for the most optimal play. And actually, you know, we were in a position to potentially come back because if they actually missed Origin Pulse on a Kyogre, maybe Thunder KOs Kyogre or gets a Para, and then suddenly maybe Marowak can actually win that. It's still probably pretty unlikely because their Amoonguss was faster than Marowak, so it could Spore me. But, you know, they were risking Play Rough and Origin Pulse there. Both of those are moves I can miss, so I was just surprised not to see a Dynamax Kyogre earlier, but maybe my opponent was honestly just trying to win without Dynamax, and in the end, they were still able to, even despite, you know, the first Origin Pulse miss. So, yeah. As you can see here, right, you're not always going to get the Trick Room set up, and fast Amoonguss plus Kyogre was a beautiful, beautiful lead for them to cover for my lead. So, yeah. That's going to be it for this episode, so thank you so much as always for watching. Leave a like if you enjoy. Don't forget to answer the question of the day, and I'll see you all soon. All right, peace.